My name is Sam. I'm the market relations lead for GEO Belgium and also working as a business consultant on web content management projects. And I have me here with Jan, who shall be giving this webinar titled From SEO to GEO to Stay Visible in the Era of AI Search with Generative Engine Optimization. Just a quick word on what we are and do as Amexio. At Amexio, we do everything regarding content science, so turning large chunks and streams of content into business value, let's say. This is structured in 4 domains. One we call ECM, so it's Enterprise Content Management. It's everything regarding internal content that goes around in companies. So think intranets, digital collaboration tools, Power Platform apps as internal tooling for processes and such. SEM, which is Structured Content Management. It's everything regarding highly structured content, usually for industrial contexts, using XML-based frameworks with authoring tools, content management, and content delivery platforms. CCM, customer communication management. It's everything regarding getting the right customized content, let's say, in the right formats to the right customers on the right moment. And then at the top right corner, we have the CXM, which is the customer experience management. This is the domain that me and Jan are working in, and it's everything regarding customer interaction content. So think web content management systems, front-end applications, customer portals, and such. This is, of course, a domain that SEO has had an important role in the past decades to reach the right audiences with this content. But with the rise of generative AI, changes happening in this area, and that's exactly what Jan is going to elaborate on in this webinar.
All right, thank you, Sam. So indeed, in the webinar today, we will talk about generative engine optimization, and we're going to learn a few things today. So first of all, we're going to discuss what's exactly happening in this space, what's the impact on your business, and what we have learned over the past years is with this kind of technology, and that's also true for SEO, you have to start with measuring, collecting data before you start optimizing, of course. Otherwise, you don't know, you have to have a baseline to optimize against. So we're going to talk about how you can measure different elements, which we'll see later, which elements are relevant, and which optimizations are interesting to look at. So, but first, I want to start with a disclaimer. All the contents of this webinar, let's say it is of as the status of yesterday evening, 5 p.m. when I closed my laptop. To say that this space is changing rapidly. This technology, AI, generative AI specifically, that kind of technology is changing very rapidly. And I'd like to reference John Mueller here, is a search advocate at Google. I think he's very interesting to follow on social channels. And he says, indeed, there's a lot of hype on this topic going on, and it's not really stable, right? So things can change every day or every week. It's highly undocumented, so there's no right documentation that describes exactly how these systems work or how these new search engines work. So it means it's a lot of black box engineering, reverse engineering. And also, like was the case with SEO, in the beginning, like we're now, it's rather technical on some points. So sometimes things work like you would expect or like you think they would go, but most of the times they probably don't. So that's just a quick disclaimer before we get started. But first take a look at what is exactly changing and what is this new technology doing and what are we seeing today. Right. So let's go back a year, like 5, 6, 7 years ago when you did a search. Let's take Google as an example. And I'm searching here on the band REM. I'm just using a keyword to search, right? So that's how search was done in the past. You mainly used keywords and you get results, and mostly this result is a list of blue links, and they're ranked according to relevance. In this case, when we search for REM, you also get some sort of rich snippets already available, which Google provides for you automatically, so you don't need to go to Wikipedia or the REM website to learn more about the basic information about the band. So, but it's rather a keyword-based search that we're doing. Now, couple of months ago, more than half a year ago, Google added something to its system, to its search system, to Google Search, called AI Overviews, what you can see here. And this allows you, this AI Overview system, what you see on the top there, it pops up when you start asking more complex questions. So when you go away from a simple keyword query and you ask, for example, why did REM split up? It provides you already an answer in place, so you don't need to go to Wikipedia or multiple other pages to learn about their split up, right? So Google has introduced this, and the data that they communicated was, okay, we see more and more of the searches of visitors actually triggering these AI overviews, and this is actually the result. So the classical blue links list is moving down the search results page, and it's replaced for a lot of queries by this generative experience where Google summarizes, right? So that's one thing which is rather impactful, and that's really changing how customers use search and do their searches. It's also changing what customers expect from search, right? Last week, Google introduced AI mode in Belgium. It was already available in the US, but it's also available in Belgium right now. As you can see here, it provides a much more conversational interface towards search. So no more blue links, no more ranking. You can actually ask very complex questions here, and keep asking questions on the same topic. It remembers the context, and it also allows you, for example, to change how the answer looks like. So I ask for a timeline here, and it nicely splits it up by team or band member. And you can get some more advanced queries. So for example, what's the songs they played on their reunion, one-time reunion, and it even can answer that. If you need to do this as a visitor yourself, you had to do multiple queries, visit multiple sites to get this information. Now you can get to this information directly within the Google interface. So that's rather impactful. Let's say it's impactful towards the visitor because it's much easier to get information. You don't need to click through. But on the business side, on the organizations that provide this information, there's also a shift happening, of course, because they get less and less traffic on their own websites. The click-through rate is going down. Some data on that, what Google is saying is they see people asking 2 to 3 times longer queries compared to the classical keyword search in AI mode. So people are starting to get used to this new conversational UI. And what they also will do is they will add more visualizations. I just asked for a simple timeline, which is textual, but in the future, they will also add some visualizations. If you are asking about, for example, financial data, it will plot the financial data for you on a graph. For example, comparing interest rates or comparing stock prices for different brands or organizations. So these things are moving more and more into Google, and customers don't need to click through to get this information. So on the Google side, which is still the main search engine nowadays, you have these AI overviews and AI mode, both using AI technologies behind the scenes. So Google is using its Gemini models here to do these summarizations and to do these conversations. And the effect is indeed less click-through rate. They also call this zero-click experiences, because as a visitor, you just ask your question and you don't need to click through to get your answer. But we're not only talking about Google, for example. You also have ChatGPT, which you can use to do queries on the web, Claude, Perplexity, Copilot, and you can keep on going. So if you visualize it a bit like this, so in the past, we had your collection of content. You did some SEO best practices on your content, and visitors visited a search engine, searched by keyword, and they get results in a list of blue links. So ranking was important, how high that you were appearing in the search result list, how high your website or domain was appearing in the list of results. And you were measuring these things by measuring the page views on their website and also the conversions, of course. What is a conversion? If enters a form, fills out a form, does a purchase, etc. So Google and Bing were the main search engines there, and this is now shifting towards these generative engines with, for example, the features AI Overview, AI Mode from Google, but also the other ones. Website clicks and conversions are still relevant because these engines also mention their sources, some of them, sometimes, not always. They mention the sources. Visitors can still click through to your own website. And that's why measuring clicks and conversions will still remain important. And not everybody will switch from keyword-based search to these AI experiences yet in a short time. They will keep existing next to each other. But what gets more important is how can you actually influence whether and how you will be visible in these generative engines and the answers that the engine is given. How often are you mentioned compared to competitors? These kinds of things become more important. To give a bit more numbers here and what the big analyst firms expect. So Bain says that 80% of customers at this moment, they rely on these zero-click results for 40% of their searches. While Gartner says that by 2028, that's in 3 years, organic traffic will keep decreasing by a ratio of at least 50%. So these are numbers to keep in mind that this shift is causing. So yeah, you could say that it's a bit of the end of the World Wide Web as we know it. To be a bit dramatic, the business model of the web is changing, right? So less click-through rate to the websites. Where do you monetize on your content, for example? That needs to shift, that needs to be rethought, we think. And when we talk to customers, we actually see from 3 perspectives, we see concerns on this topic. So from a business perspective, a marketing perspective, and an IT perspective, we see concerns or questions. So on the business side, people are asking themselves, okay, we are losing traffic, and because of that, we're also losing sales, because these people get their answers directly in AI. They don't click through to our website, so we see visiting numbers to our websites lowering. Also, conversions are going down. That's a concern for business. Marketing says, okay, how can we justify investing in our own public channels if we are not sure that that these channels actually attribute towards conversion? So, and on the IT side is questions about, okay, is our content structured well enough, accessible towards these AI systems? Do we need to do specific things to make our content accessible? So on 3 perspectives, we see concerns and questions popping up. All right. And if you take a look at the numbers, where you see a comparison between, okay, is this really the case? Are these AI tools really nipping into the traditional search? At this moment, what we see, the traditional search traffic is constant. It isn't lowering that much. So this is a report from last month, and you actually see traditional search is not declining. What we do see here, and this graph makes this clear, these AI tools are actually appearing. Users are starting to use these tools next to classic search, next to traditional search. So we see these extra tools, they start being used by a lot of customers or a lot of visitors, but they keep using the traditional methods too. Concerning conversion rate, most of conversions still happen on classic organic traffic. Traffic that's coming from LLMs doesn't see that much conversion compared to traditional traffic. And this also varies by industry vertical. Here you can see, for example, in the financial sector, there's much higher chance of conversion when coming from an AI-based search engine compared to a traditional search engine. But this is not true for all industries, right? So this is not something, not that black and white, right? So these are a few numbers. I mentioned the references there where you can read more about these reports. But these things, yeah, new reports are appearing every week. So these things need to be followed up, I think. So we now looked into, okay, what is happening in this space? What's the impact on visitors and the behavior of the visitor or the customer? And now we're going to talk about how you can measure this as an organization. The reports that I showed collect a lot of data from various sources, but how can you actually look into your own data? What data do you need to collect? How can you analyze it? to get a better view for what's relevant for your organization. So actually what you want to do is you want to get some number of insights, right? First of all, you want to, in an ideal case, you would know what your customers are talking about in these AI chatbots, in these AI conversational UIs. What questions are they asking? What are they discussing? That would be very helpful. Unfortunately, none of the search engines, these generative search engines or the AI systems provide that data to the outside world. So these are all black boxes, right? So what is key for that first question, what are your customers talking about? You cannot get that directly from, let's say, ChatGPT or Gemini, etc. In the past, you had for Google, you could have some trends concerning keywords, etc. That's not true here. So you have to know very well for your own organization, who are your customers and what are they actually, what are their main questions? What are their concerns? You can do surveys to do this. Also, you can look into your customer service department, see what questions are coming in, talk to customers about, okay, what concerns you, what are the questions you have every day about our products, about our service. And this information is really key to build and provide content to these customers that triggers for them. And that's essential in this case too, because that is also what these AI search engines start surfacing if these customers ask these questions in these tools. Another metric that's interesting to look at is agentic traffic. Okay, are we crawled by these AI chatbots? Is our content used by these chatbots or by these systems to generate answers, right? That's a second thing. Third thing is, okay, in these answers, is our organization even mentioned? Or in these answers, is there references back to our own website, your brand presence, right? And if customers are asking questions about your organizations, what's the general sentiment for your organization, how it is perceived? Referral traffic, that is the click-through from AI search engines. So if the user gets an answer and decides, okay, I want to learn more, I click the reference for that answer. That's the referral traffic, the traffic coming to your own website from these systems. Also interesting to compare between, okay, the conversion rates, do they differ when people come from these AI search systems compared to classic organic search? So you know where to invest and what amount to invest in what area. Okay, but it first starts indeed with measuring and getting that benchmark right. So let's take we also already discussed about, okay, what are customers talking about? It's hard to know from these systems. This is knowledge that you have to build yourself in your organization, definitely. Look at peers in the industry, look at data that there is for what customers are actually, main questions are for customers. But let's take a look at the second one, agentic traffic. Okay, which content is being crawled? This is a snippet of the documentation of ChatGPT. It's available on that URL, and there you can see actually the user agents that ChatGPT is using when coming by your website. And they have 3 different ones, okay? You have on the bottom there, you have GPT bot. If you see that in the server logs, that means that ChatGPT is coming by to train its model based on your content. GPT bot, if you look on most of websites have been crawled in the past by GPT bot, right? It was used to train GPT 3.5 and 4.0 and 5. The models behind there were trained by GPT bot coming by, reading content to train the world module for this large language model used by ChatGPT. I mentioned server logs. You cannot measure this in Google Analytics or other analytics tools because they work based on JavaScript. These crawlers, they do not execute JavaScript. So you need to rely on the call that is entering your server or CDN. The second one, the middle one there, ChatGPT user, that's when ChatGPT, when the user opens ChatGPT, and ChatGPT decides, okay, I need to do a live web search to answer this question. I need to up-to-date information that is outside of my model. I will do a query to a number of websites, and that is done using the ChatGPT user agent. And the third one on top there, OAI search bot, that is when ChatGPT is in search mode explicitly. So you have this globe icon in ChatGPT, you can activate, you place it into search mode. search GPT also called, and that is the user agent used in that case. So this is very interesting data to have. This means, for example, you can see, okay, is the middle one, for example, ChatGPT user, are there a lot of calls on certain areas of my website, certain sections using that user agent? Then you know, okay, this is content that is really relevant for users at the moment because ChatGPT comes and fetch this content because it gets a question about this content. So this is very valuable information to have as an organization. Also, make sure that you do not block these calls from your server. That happens because these bots come along often. That means you might have higher costs on the infrastructure level. But of course, if you block them, you won't be appearing, or your content won't appear in these answers from these systems. So this is about agentic traffic. Next to that, we have referral traffic, like I mentioned before. And this is an example. I searched again for my favorite band, REM, and you see the system answers, and there are the references in gray. If users click that reference, in most of the cases, a UTM source is passed along the URL that it is sent to your website. So UTM source is chatgpt.com. This you can track, of course, in Google Analytics. So in Google Analytics, you can create a view that's actually giving you an overview of, okay, these are clicks, or these are clicks indeed that came to my website from, in this case, ChatGPT. The user agent or the UTM source, not all of these systems do this. ChatGPT does this, and it does it most of the time. Sometimes it doesn't. So again, back to the beginning, this is not really stable and not really well documented. A quick detail here, ChatGPT uses Bing in the backend as a search engine to do searches, and then it will summarize the search results coming back from Bing and decides to go deeper. So it might be interesting to look at specific best practice that there are to optimize for Bing. There is an interesting link below with more information on that. So I mentioned Google Analytics. You can measure it and create dashboards specifically to measure referral traffic coming from AI systems. On the right, again, an interesting link within how to set this up. Same is true for Adobe Analytics. There's also a blog post on the Adobe communities page that explains how to do this in Adobe Analytics. So referral traffic is measurable in traditional analytics tools. Of course, depends on whether the referrer UTM parameter is provided. Maybe in the referrer URL you could also use. And on the agentic traffic side, I mentioned investigating server logs. You could build dashboards on this. This is an example of CloudFront in AWS, where you can build dashboards on top of the requests coming into the server to get insights, but you already see this is more like for an IT audience. You cannot give this to a business user. So that's why we see these tools are starting to pop up that actually provide end-to-end measures as well, referral traffic, agentic traffic, etc., from these different vendors in one package that are more built for business users and marketing people. I will highlight one of them from our partner Adobe. They released LLM Optimizer. It was released the day before yesterday. And there's a demo which I made available, which is interesting to check out. And what they're actually doing is, with this tool, you can measure your brand presence. And you might ask yourself, how can this tool do this? Because you do not know what questions visitors are asking. Well, this, like most of the other tools, you have to provide these questions inside the tool yourself. And this tool will do the queries to the different search engines, to the different AI systems. In ChatGPT, it will execute the query. In Google, it will do it in Gemini, in Copilot, for example, and it will look at the answers and gives you insights into the answers, comparing also, for example, one of your competitors is popping up when a visitor asks this question and you are not popping up, you get these kinds of insights. So you get insights into agentic traffic, also how often is my content crawled, which sections of my site are crawled, which are not crawled, for example. And it also provides you some insights into, okay, is everything crawlable? Do you have to fix some 404 errors? Is your robots.txt etc., structured well, and provides with best practices. So a very interesting tool. And there's also a Chrome extension available, which you can use to check whether your content is readable by these systems. Okay, so we looked at a lot of different elements which you can measure. We saw some really raw things to do with server logs and building dashboards on top of that, and also some tools that now provide these features to business users, right? So now let's talk about optimizations. How can you optimize for these new kind of AI search engines? And actually, if you go and look deeper into this topic, you will see that what Google, for example, says, okay, all the best practices that were available before for SEO, they still remain very valid for in the era of GEO. You do not need to do specific special things for these AI search engines. You do not need to create special machine readable files, AI text files, etc. Just follow the best practices for SEO. That means if you have a good SEO strategy and good SEO optimizations already in place, you're already good to go for generative engine optimization. And this is not only a technical element, like for example, everything concerning robots.txt, schema.org, metadata, but also just creating very good content that is people first, like it's mentioned here by Google itself. On the technical side, I mentioned before, when AI crawlers come by to visit and get your content to be included in an answer, they do not execute JavaScript. They also do not download images and interpret these images. That isn't happening, all right? So you have to make sure that all of your core content is rendered on the server and is visible in the browser without JavaScript executing. That way, it can also be interpreted by these AI systems. Fast load times was also very important concerning classic SEO rules. These AI search engines really want to provide fast answers to the visitor. So if they notice you have a slow loading page, it will just go skip it and do not use that content because it's not fast enough to, it also needs to calculate the answer. So fast load times are very important. Robots.txt, sitemap XML, semantic HTML, schema.org markup. Nothing new here, no rocket science. These are all things that were described before as best practices for SEO too. They are still very relevant for GEO. Concerning schema.org markup, one thing there, it's best to use JSON-LD, which is recommended instead of inline macro data because it's much faster to get to the JSON-LD schema.org markup, and it does not need to parse the whole HTML of the page. So JSON-LD is recommended in that case. I also mentioned before, there's no need to create specific LLMs.txt file, for example, which is now popping up as a potential way to provide raw content towards these LLMs. It is not used by most of these systems. Which is confirmed here by John Mueller. It was 5 months ago, so and this is the status of today. Maybe in the future this will become relevant again, but there's no need to focus on these kinds of tools or formats in the short term. Concerning this micro data, schema.org, an example here of opening hours, for example, in the source code, what you can see there of the HTML, it's annotated, it's additional metadata is attached to it, which make it much easier for these AI algorithms to interpret what is on the page, right? So this is, in this case, it's an opening hours that are specified, and it provides a bit more structure for these kinds of systems to read the opening hours and to present them correctly in their answer. So this is best practice. That is also no new technology, but it's a best practice to have. On the content side, we already mentioned, all right, you have to know what questions your visitors are asking and provide them with the right content, with the right answers to these questions. So that means that you have to know, okay, how does the journey of my customer look like, and what are the questions in every step of the journey that the customer might be having, and provide content to the customer for every one of these stages. That in most cases, this means, okay, instead of just creating content and in pages linked to each other, you have to think about clustering content into certain topics, and then per topic, having specific questions listed and answered. That's a way to think about content. It will be much more FAQ based. If you have a marketing page, for example, always include a section about, okay, these are the frequently asked questions customers might have concerning this product or service, with the answers in line. These will be picked up if the questions and answers are relevant. They will be picked up by these systems. So it's about covering real topics and thinking about question answer, and not just thinking about keywords anymore. All right. And the much easier it is for a human to understand your content if you summarize it, for example, in the beginning. You do a too long didn't read style introduction to a page before diving into the whole article. That's very beneficial for people, but also for these AI systems. They can pick up the core of your content and use that to answer questions that customers might be having. In what is described in within 160 characters, to have the benefits or the core message displayed it's a best practice. Also to have key elements highlighted in articles, to associate your brand across different parts of your content, and also think about third-party sources, right? So it's not only AI engines are not only using your own websites, for example, to get answers. You might look on, for example, Reddit forums or other social media forums where users are actually creating content concerning your brand, are posting reviews, etc., or discussing products you might have or services. It's also a place to monitor and see how you can improve what is being said there, or as a brand actually start discussing inside of these discussions. A lot of interesting links there with more information about these best practices. But in the end, it's talking, you have to invest in good content, writing content that is very useful for human beings, for your customers, about the questions they are having. This is the content that will be picked up by AI search engines with large language models and used to answer questions. So in a nutshell, actually, GEO is nothing new. It's not something that is standing next to SEO. It's really an extension of what we already have with SEO. The basics still remain valid. The foundations stay the same. There are some extra things that you can do, but consider it as part of SEO. It's a new way or a modern way of doing SEO, right? So that concludes our overview we had today. So we started with an introduction about the topic, GEO, what is changing in the market, what the big players are doing, Google, Copilot, Microsoft, etc. What's the impact on what the visitors are actually, how are they behaving, what are they expecting, what's the impact on your organization, how you can measure that on different levels, both agentic traffic, referral traffic, and also some ways to optimize, where we saw that actually SEO best practices are still very valid. On top of that, some extra things you can do and take into account, but SEO best practices stay in place. All right. So we would like to thank everyone for joining today, and keep an eye on our social channels. We have more webinars coming up in the coming months. Thank you very much, and talk to you later. Bye.